This time Candle Story had the opportunity to discuss the plot in the film, entitled Flowers in the Attic. Tells about brother and sister. For 2 years they lived in the attic, and the problem is that they are not allowed out of there at all by their grandmother, until they finally grow up, until they start to have feelings for each other. So, what's the full story? Let's just get into the storyline. At the beginning of the film we are shown a house that is quite large and named Fox World Hold. Then the movie continues and shows the inside of the house that looks dull and dusty. All the furniture in the house seem to be surrounded by white cloth, and so many cobwebs there, and it gives a strange impression to the house. Then a flashback movie to a few years before, showing a normal and happy family, which turns out the father just came back after finishing with his work out of town. When they were playing together in the backyard, the father and mother stopped their fun for a moment. Their father said if he gets a promotion at the place he works, but one of his daughters, Kathy, looks gloomy after hearing the news. The reason is that Kathy doesn't want her beloved dad to leave for a long time because of his new position. But the father only gave him advice. Then his father gave him a very beautiful gold ring. Some time later, to be precise on his father's birthday, their family had a small party at home, and they intend to give a surprise when his father will return that afternoon. But after waiting for a long time, the father never came home, but the one who arrived at the house was a policeman by telling the sad news that their father has died in a car accident. In disbelief at the sad news they just heard, thus bringing to the point where their entire family can no longer do anything. Long story short, the life of that little family has now changed. Now the mother is trying hard to provide for her family, plus he's now having a hard time finding a suitable job. Then Chris and Kathy, who are cool to play bicycles in the yard, asked to enter the house immediately. They were told that they currently have to live with their grandparents, who resides in Virginia. They will get the inheritance if they stay there for a while. It turns out that their grandparents are rich parents. Chris and Kathy looked confused by what their mother said, because previously they were told that their grandparents were gone. The mother then explained to them that all they had, starting from the house, car, even the necklace they have, has been guaranteed to the bank, and now they have nothing. Then their family finally left their house. They go to Virginia by train. Long story short, at 3 o'clock in the morning they finally got off the train, but the station looks so very quiet, there's no one else but them there. Having no other choice, they ended up continuing their journey on foot. After walking for quite a while, they finally arrived at their destination, their grandmother's house. The house looks quite big, like a hostel. When they got to the yard, the grandmother opened the door for them. Without asking anything, Grandma immediately told them to come in. After entering, they were immediately directed to their room, which was on the top floor of the house. Grandma also told girls and boys to be separated. Grandma's goal is to separate them so that no unwanted things happen. He also warned not to be too noisy while in this house. If you don't obey, Grandpa will be annoyed or will scold them. Then Chris asked his mother how long will they stay in this house, and his mother answered, they won't be long. Maybe a week is a long time. Moments later, the grandmother who had noticed the ring on Kathy's hand. Quickly, the grandmother asked for the ring in a slightly pushy tone, but Kathy refused because the ring was a gift from his father. But the grandmother did not want to lose. She kept forcing Kathy to give up the ring. Before his mother left them, his mother ordered not to talk about their father while here. Turns out their mother did not get along with the grandfather because Grandpa didn't approve of their relationship from the start. Then mother and grandmother left them the next day, and when the kids get up and Grandma arrived in their room with the food she brought, he also read out a list of rules that they must obey and no one should break them. The most important rule is not to be noisy and not allowed to cry. The room must always be tidy, as if they weren't there. And when the officers come every Friday morning to clean up, they should hide in the attic soon, and the stairs are there. They are also allowed to play in the attic, but there is no fuss. Then, when Grandma left, with a bit of trepidation they went up to the attic to check it out. Kathy finds a table, but it has the name and date written on it. And they conclude that they weren't the first to occupy the room. Then Chris made a swing to cheer up their youngest brother. When they are fun playing in the room, suddenly their grandmother and mother came into their room, and Grandma came with an annoyed expression on her face, and after he finished admonishing them not to make any more noise, he then left the room with their mother. Not so long after leaving the room, the two of them came back again, and Grandma said that their mother had just been dismissed because of her children's disobedient and naughty behavior. The mother said that she would be fully willing to accept the consequences in order to protect her children, and promised to get out of this house in the near future. Grandma casually said go ahead, but the mother realizes that she has nothing left. Moreover, he has to be the backbone to meet the needs of his four children. The next day, we can see the mother returning to the attic with a supply of paints for her children, and the children ask, will this only make Grandma angry? And Mom told them something. Grandma won't go up to the attic because she's allergic to dust. Mother also told them about her past story. When she was a girl, he and his grandfather have a very close relationship because it made Grandma dislike him, until one day Grandpa starts to focus on his work. And what happened? Grandma even embarrassed Mother in front of all her friends. And Mother became lonely until Grandfather's stepsister came and offered to live with them. And he is only a few years older than Mother, also very handsome. And Grandpa treats him very well like his own son. Kathy knew the man her mother was referring to. He is their father, until they finally get married. While their grandmother actually doesn't really agree with their marriage. The reason is because they are worried that it will have an impact on their children in the future. But in reality, the four of them lacked nothing in life and grew up healthy. Long story short, they've been there for a month. They really are only allowed to play in the attic only. Now Kathy is urging her mother to let them out of the house immediately. Especially with his two younger siblings really want to play outside and will breathe fresh air. Kathy also asked when they would be introduced to Grandpa. However, the mother doesn't seem to want to hear the question. He reasoned that Grandfather would forgive him and would give him some of the inheritance if Mother had no children. For that, Mother asked them to be a little patient. A few months later, in fact, they still live in that house. Now they are celebrating Christmas and don't miss the mother giving gifts to her children. He also said something that they will receive the inheritance soon, currently being taken care of by a lawyer named Mr. Minslow. When at night, Grandpa and Grandma having a big party at their house. Chris and Kathy were so curious that they both secretly watched the party after. Chris managed to get their room keys. Not long, the grandfather finally appeared in the crowd. Then gave a box containing a necklace to the mother. Then Mom and the lawyer Winslow met. It turns out that the lawyer has feelings for the mother and he confesses his feelings, and he is willing to marry her. After they talked, Winslow openly took him somewhere to do worldly pleasures, but the mother still has doubts about Winslow. And when Kathy was about to go back to the room, Chris said that he would catch up soon with the excuse that he still wanted to see the corners of Grandpa's house. However, Sarah's actions were noticed by her mother, who immediately reprimanded her with a bit of annoyance. Her mother asserted that Sarah's actions could result in Mother failing to get her inheritance. In the next morning, Kathy asks Mom about her relationship with Mr. Winslow. Her mother answered very casually that their closeness is nothing but comrade and Lord Winslow is the one who takes care of Mother's property. No more than that. Now they have been living there for a year. And now Christopher is growing up and starts to get a little curious when he looks at adult magazines. Then Kathy asked her mother, "What are the characteristics of people who first entered puberty?" Mother replied that women will experience menstruation, and men will experience changes in their voices, their mustaches will grow. After Mom answered Kathy's question, her mom gave her address. It wasn't long before Christopher appeared and made him a little surprised to see Kathy. And suddenly, Grandma comes and surprises them both and accuses them of doing something weird. Then Grandma punished them both, until Grandma wants to shave Kathy's hair. If they disobey, then they will be ready to starve for a week. As a good brother, Chris defended his sister and said that they did nothing. It's not what it seems, it's all just a misunderstanding. After a while, they start to feel hungry. Kathy can't take it anymore and wants to go to Grandma and say she's ready to accept the punishment. But Chris forbids it and keeps saying that this is all just a misunderstanding. A while later, Grandma finally came back and brought food for them. Morning came, and when Kathy woke up, she was shocked to see her hair was so damaged. He has to let go of what has happened and he will shave his own hair. And Chris wants to help him. Here Chris's gaze starts to look strange to his sister, but Chris can still control himself right now. Long story short, it turns out that Mom hasn't visited them for a month. At night, Kathy and Chris sneak out through the window with the help of a rope to go down. They don't intend to run away but just want to play on a large field. And their two younger siblings also started to complain. This is all because of their mother, who used to visit them almost every day. But this time Mother didn't come for a month. The next day their mother finally came back to visit them. Mother immediately told her children that she was married to Lord Winslow and he just went on a honeymoon in Europe with Winslow. Then mothers give gifts to their children. But Chris is upset because Mom has betrayed their dad. And Chris was also upset that Mom was having fun out there while they were locked up in an enclosed space for almost 2 years. Long story short, Grandma is suddenly nice to them by bringing them donuts, but Grandma reasoned that the food was a gift from her mother. One day Kathy said that they could just leave Grandma in this old house, but Chris still doesn't agree with Kathy and still wants to live with their mother even with all the limitations. Chris also believes that soon their inheritance will be granted. But Kathy said that their freedom and happiness now doesn't have to be with money anymore. Can play freely. Kathy is already very happy. A moment later, Grandma came back into their room. He looks angry at Chris because Chris is standing right in front of the window. Maybe the grandmother thought that Chris would run away. But Chris defended himself and denied Grandmother's accusations against him. Hearing that statement from Chris, Grandma got even more annoyed, and Chris must accept the consequences. And the next day, Kathy asked about Chris's condition. At the same time, Grandma came back to their room and was so surprised when she saw Chris and Kathy look so close. Here Chris suddenly apologized, and what did he do last night while kneeling in front of Grandma? When Chris was forgiven, Grandma finally came out of the room. Chris secretly managed to print the key that opened all the rooms held by the grandmother using the candle she made last night. And the next day Chris started to make the duplicate keys with the prints he made yesterday. They planned to leave from there. But they realized one thing, that they don't have any money at all. Long story short, they finally managed to make the key. Then they started looking for any items that could be used as money when they came out later. A moment later, unexpectedly, Chris saw his mother making out with Mr. Winslow. Out of curiosity, Chris is watching the TV very seriously. Maybe his mind can be a lesson for him someday. Continue when Chris back in his room, and coincidentally Kathy was also in the room. Chris, who was already lustful because he saw his mother doing something, immediately practiced it with his sister, but they were caught by the little one. Luckily, the little one still doesn't understand what the two of them are doing. The next morning, suddenly their youngest sister fell ill. Then Kathy asked her mother to immediately take her youngest sister to the hospital for treatment. A few moments later, their mother returned after dropping the youngest to the hospital and brought the bad news that the youngest could not eat for the time being. After their mother was not in the room, Kathy immediately told Chris that they had to leave right away, because otherwise their fate will be exactly the same as their little brother. And Chris agreed to Kathy's invitation. But before they really left, Chris first tried to go to Grandpa's room to get some jewelry that was there. A while later, the two maids of Grandfather suddenly also entered the room because he heard something. But the male servant said that the sound was definitely not the children doing it, but the cat or the mouse. And the two maids were also talking that the mother of those children is now in charge of this house because the inheritance has been given since a few months ago to them. But Chris and his siblings haven't been told by their mother at all. Then Chris returned to his destination, then looked into the room, and it turned out that Grandma had been wearing a wig all this time. At the same time, Chris even wanted to laugh what he saw, but the grandmother realized the existence of Chris. While the panicked Chris rushed back to his room and told his younger siblings to immediately leave the house. But their actions have to stop again, because Grandma was already in front of them and immediately asked for a duplicate of the key they had. When Chris was about to give the duplicate key to Grandma, Chris ordered Kathy and her sister to immediately go up to the attic, until Grandma and only is in the middle of the stairs. Do you still remember that Grandma has allergies? And when he went up to the attic, Chris quickly locked the access to the attic and turned off the lights, and finally he went upstairs casually and immediately descended from there, using the rope he had prepared for a long time. And at the end of the film, we are shown Chris, Kathy, and their little sister on their way somewhere. For the first time after 2 years locked, finally they can breathe a sigh of relief, and the movie is over.